This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com. Well, we know we're not going to see Bret and Hogan at SummerSlam, so we've got to have something else. Famously, 4th of July, aboard the USS Intrepid, we see the Stars and Stripes Challenge. There's various athletes from several sports trying to body slam Yokozuna, who at this point had never been slammed in the company. From the WWF, we would have the Steiner brothers, Bob Backlund, Tatanka, Crush, Randy Savage. None of them are successful. There's NBA players, there's NFL players, there's hockey players. None of them are successful. And then all of a sudden a helicopter flies in and it lands, and out comes Lex Luger in a red, white, and blue shirt. And he's going to walk up to the ring. And at this point, we had only seen him as a heel here in the company. He'd been the narcissist Lex Luger. After a brief stare down, he hits him with his bionic forearm, which we've been told has a metal plate in it. And then he body slams Yokozuna. And now in the process, Vince McMahon apparently has his new top baby face. With Hogan out of here, we need a new American hero, and it's Lex Luger. Maybe not the best idea we ever had. What'd you think of this creative? You were very familiar with Lex. You had worked with him, in Crockett and of course WCW. They had tried unsuccessfully maybe with this narcissist gimmick. And now we're going to have an about face, and he's going to be the hero America needs. What'd you think of that creative?
Well, the concept of the concept I liked. The presentation was pretty much amazing. To have that big a crowd it was 100 degrees that day. I mean, I know some of the boys were talking about, how hot the mat was, and the heat coming off the mat was just almost, insurmountable. The idea was good. I remember going over to the Intrepid with Nelson Swegler, and Nelson was the head of Vince's production arm for many, many years. And so Nelson was the producer for the vignettes. I don't know if you remember the vignettes. Folks can go back and look at them, where Ole JR was on the Intrepid and doing these vignettes to get ready for the event, and prep and get this in all the shows. So I got some good exposure on that situation. But so I like the idea in general, and no disrespect to Lex, who's his battle health problems and things of that nature the last several years. He's a born again Christian. He's living a good life, and he's coping. He was the right guy in hindsight, but going into it, did he have the look? Oh, hell yeah. Amazing look. He looked good in red, white, and blue. They had the plan to do the Lex Express and all that good stuff. But I thought the idea in general was a very good idea to get a new baby face over, because remember, Conrad, he didn't beat Yokozuna.
Right.
He body slammed him.
Right.
So I could buy that. It's just over time, Lex had challenges connecting with the audience somewhat, and a natural organic connection. But how would you know that until you get on your journey and get on your old Lex Express and start driving around? So I didn't have a problem with the angle. It just was maybe in hindsight, which is easier to say now for you and I to talk about, it probably was the wrong guy. And so you said, well, who else would it have been? I don't know if you could have done the same angle with somebody else, and that because Luger was so big, so strong, 6'4", 6'5", and he was strong. But it just at the end of the day, it didn't pan out. But in the beginning, I thought, well, what an amazing idea this is. And then when you see all those people on the ship on the 4th of July in New York City, man, McMahon knew how to create sizzle, and that situation had a ton of sizzle.
A ton of sizzle. Let's keep it going here. A week later on the July 12th Raw, it's headlined by Yokozuna and Crush. Because of what happened on the Intrepid, Yoko's going berserk, and he's going to give Crush several bonsais after pinning him. Then he destroys Tatanka and a few enhancement guys, and Randy Savage and Tatanka pull Crush out of the ring. Great segment. Then we see Yoko working with Bret on a lot of house shows, and he's even pinning Bret in a lot of them. He is losing some by DQ. And then we do the big contract signing. It's Yokozuna and Lex Luger for SummerSlam. On the February 28th, 1994 Raw, we see Yoko wrestle Randy Savage in a great match, but it ends in a DQ when Crush interferes. And now we're set for WrestleMania 10. And this was going to be essentially 2 world title matches because of the controversial finish to the Royal Rumble. As you may remember, Brett and Luger were the last 2 in the ring. They both went over the top at the same time and both landed on the floor at the same time. They do a coin flip, and that will determine that Lex was going to wrestle Yokozuna for the world title first. And then Brett's going to wrestle the winner later that night. And in his first match at WrestleMania that year, Owen Hart would pin Bret Hart. So Brett's wrestling twice. Ultimately, Yoko beats Lex Luger 14 minutes and 40 seconds. Meltzer didn't love it. It gets half a star, and the whole arena is filled with boring chants.
Well, they couldn't follow Owen and Brett.
Yeah, it's a bad spot to be in.
And you had to know, I was unbooked. I was sitting home watching that show, WrestleMania 10. I'd fallen out of grace again, or first time, I guess. But nonetheless, it's irrelevant. It's just part of the journey, folks. It's all it is. Just part of the journey. Didn't kill me. You got to hang in there. Uncle Dusty told me, if you will, you turn your jersey in, Santa, you can't be on the team. So I hadn't turned my jersey in, but I was on the IR list, I guess, or inactive list. Following Brett and Owen. Nobody followed Brett and Owen that night. Nobody. Now,
Right.
The only thing that came close, and I'll give them the credit because they had an amazing performance in what was then a somewhat brand new match, was Razor and Shawn in the ladder match. Those 2 matches were the highlights of that entire WrestleMania card. And so and of course, fans in the Garden express themselves. They're Northeastern folks. They don't have any problem telling you how they feel. And so that was the deal. They had a very challenge because a whole different pace. And the pace was slower. Of course, it's Yoko, more methodical, more deliberate. And Owen and Brett was constant motion, athleticism, and this was a whole different presentation. And then, of course, the ladder match, again, even more different because it used a ladder. And people had not seen that situation on a wide scale. So I can understand Meltzer's apprehensions, but quite frankly, when you think back at it, how could anything else follow Brett and Owen except for the ladder match?
There's been lots of rumor and innuendo that Lex Luger was supposed to win the title here, and it's become a famous story where allegedly he was at a bar and told a reporter the night before or a couple nights before that he was going to win the world title, and Vince finds out and changes it to a DQ finish. I think we've poked holes in that over the years, though. I know you weren't exactly plugged in to the creative at this point, but do you believe that old wives' tale that maybe Luger was supposed to win, and then in the main event, Brett would wind up beating Luger?
I've never heard that with any authenticity, Conrad.
Right.
Could it have happened? I'm assuming it could happen. But I don't remember anyone that had direct knowledge of it. Bruce because Bruce was on the inside then, as he is now. And so he may have heard something about that. I did not. I was really out of the loop and was kind of a persona non grata individual at that point in time. So I was not privy to a lot of the imaginations in the front office.
Well, let's talk about August 13th. Madison Square Garden is going to draw 13,000 folks, not a full house, but in any other arena, that would be a lot of people. Yokozuna is going to beat Brett in a steel cage match to retain. And, the first ever Yokozuna Lex Luger match doesn't even happen for the WWF. It happens at the Mid-South Coliseum for the USWA. Lex is going to pin Yoko after a body slam, a clothesline, and an elbow drop. This is the same historic show that we would see Vince McMahon play, I guess, the predecessor for his evil Vince McMahon or Mr. McMahon character. He's going to interfere in a Jerry Lawler, Paul Neighbors match by tripping Lawler. And Vince does a heel promo that has really got a lot of traction in the last 10 years or so online. Of all places for Yokozuna and Lex Luger to have their first match, how big of a favor was this to Jerry for it to happen in Memphis?
Well, it was a favor to Jerry, but more importantly, it was off Broadway where there would be fewer eyeballs seeing the run through. That's all that was. It was the money for Memphis was anything to do with the King.
Right.
And so Vince being the heel there, to me, that was what was underscored or circled or highlighted. That was the match that people are going to talk about, because Lawler could go on his own local TV show that was getting astronomical ratings and talk about it and talk them into the building. And of course, Vince sent in promos and things like that. And Vince is living in his element. He's doing exactly what his dad didn't want him to ever do, and that was become a performer. King was always influenced by heels. I think his favorite wrestler, he's told me many times, was Dr. Jerry Graham, and who was a noted heel, and the old cigar smoking. Vince even bleached his hair one time, and I think his dad almost killed him. And so he was influenced by the heels like Dr. Jerry Graham. But so the Luger Yoko thing was to see what kind of chemistry they had, what sequences they did well, because you're working with a guy, even though Lex had been in the business for a while, his strength was not laying out matches. And Yoko was somewhat, Yoko had much more experience. But you still needed a producer. You still needed somebody to kind of steer them in the right direction, call the right plays, if you will. So it's off Broadway in Memphis, in all due respect to Memphis, but it wasn't a national broadcast.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a smart move, using Vince as the lost leader item to get him in the building. And then while you're there, let's see what this Yokozuna Lex Luger thing's going to look like.
Right.
And so that's what that was about.
Well, he's going to very quickly get programmed in with the Macho Man. And that's got to be quite a vote of confidence when one of your first opponents in the company is the Macho Man, and you're not on the losing side of that effort. You're beating Randy Savage. That's got to be, prime real estate for anybody debuting in the company, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing about that, on the other side of that equation, is that Savage, who could be, I don't want to say could be difficult, but he kind of was at times. Randy knew exactly what he wanted. Randy was not a big compromise guy. Randy also was a second generation guy, so he had great product knowledge and a feel for the game, a feel for the Macho Man character. Randy had to sign off on that. None of that would have happened with Savage's position on whatever side of the aisle you want to say. He had a lot of influence and a lot of clout with McMahon. So for Yoko to do with Randy what he did was signed off on Savage. So Savage saw money in Yokozuna, and things like that then would just reinforce McMahon's instincts that we're onto something.
Well, it happened. Let's talk about SummerSlam, where it's going to happen for the company. Oh, we should mention on the way here, Jim Cornette and Yokozuna even appear on the Regis and Kathy Lee show the morning of SummerSlam, which has always been a big deal to be on Regis and Kathy Lee. And Meltzer at the time said that Cornette was told by the company to be funny and not be a heel on the show. And as a result, everyone's cheering for Yokozuna, which is kind of weird. August 30th, 1993. That's where we're going for SummerSlam, the Palace of Auburn Hills in Auburn Hills, Michigan. And, they even have, this is kind of a fun presentation. Aaron Neville and Jimmy Suzuki sing the national anthems for their respective country, which is, I guess, kind of fun. Meltzer was pretty critical of Lex Luger here. He says, Lex Luger, who lost so much weight, he looked like he was really Stan Lane showed up. Seriously, Luger looked right at 230, which is only about a 65-pound drop in the past year and 30 pounds down in just the last few weeks. Ultimately, he didn't love the match though. 2 3/4 stars. But the idea is it's not this big celebration that maybe they were hoping for. It's not an anointing of Lex Luger. They still play a big video when it's over, and they still have the big celebration, but we don't have a new champion. And a lot of people are shocked, myself included, that after this big build, Lex doesn't become champ. As far as you know, Jim, was that ever the original plan, or was this always the plan to just keep this Yokozuna train going?
I think that the plan was to eventually get the title on Luger.
Right.
So he could be the new Hogan, that seemed like the direction that we were headed at that point in time. But somewhere along the way, and isn't funny, the timeline? You're talking about this whole Luger thing evolving on July the 4th,
Right.
and the bloom was off the rose not that much longer, not much later. So I think, hey, look, people got to give McMahon credit. He could sense things, feel things, and he had Pat and Bruce around him to say, look, he's not getting over, or the agent reports. The thing about when you in WWF at that time, and when we had live events, every morning when I got up, I had an agent report faxed to me from the site, from the arena, and it had the whole story of every match. Not he dropped down, he leapfrogged, not that, but the high spots of the match were given, and that was recorded by Jack Lanza as a rule, and others, but Lanza was the lead agent for a lot of those shows. And then he would call it in, and Howard Finkel would record it. Then Howard would then get to the office 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and would put it on paper, and then he would distribute the agent reports, and that would be another fax to your home. So when I could get up in the morning when I was doing the booking and the live events, I knew exactly who had a good match. In Jack Lanza's opinion, which I trusted, you got to trust them until they prove that they're giving you erroneous information or not factual information. And then sometimes Jack would not put everything in the agent report, and that would be a phone call, because we stopped that. I said, I don't want to share any, because a lot of people got this agent report that was not on the wrestling side. They're in marketing or TV or whatever. So I don't know how often they read them. I read them religiously. I had to. But when there's really negative news, somebody was, hey, I think so-and-so is drinking, or this guy was late, second night in a row, just don't put that in the agent report. Tell me, because I don't need to share the negative information with other people. And I talked to Vince about that. I said, we're going to get the information, and you'll get it as quick as I do. But I don't think we need to share the negativity with other members of the company. I don't think it makes any of us look good, and it's a little bit of break in confidence. So that's kind of where that was. But the agent reports just weren't good, and they were consistently not good. So I think you have to make a decision. Well, we've got to fish or cut bait.
Right.
And on that situation, we cut bait.
Of course, the big celebration is Luger does win, but by count out. So he's not champ. And Meltzer says there's a very logical business reason to not change the title. The biggest money match this company has is for WrestleMania. It's Yokozuna versus Lex Luger. They can't draw a WrestleMania buy rate with Yoko as the challenger. The scenario that makes sense is for Luger to be denied a title shot because of the no return clause, and then being forced to win the Royal Rumble to get a shot at Mania, which he would. Whether it was a good or bad decision will be determined by the fall business. I guess that's an okay storyline.
Yeah, well, you want your hero to be chasing,
right?
And you want your hero to have insurmountable odds facing him, and certainly Yokozuna presented that. So Meltzer's right in that respect. The money match at WrestleMania would be Yokozuna as the champion, period, versus whomever was ready and was positioned in that role. So you needed Yoko to be the champion so that the fans had hope in that era. Different era now, folks. Different era of mindset now. Had hope in that era that the babyface would eventually prevail. And could it be? Will it be at WrestleMania?
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.